for my own interest in racism in the UK, I had accumulated all this knowledge. So I was asked by Rainbow Films in order to go to the Black Lives Matter protest and actually speak vocally about it. And it was good because some of my friends had compromised immune systems or just didn't feel comfortable leaving the house. It meant that when I was doing a live stream, I could give them updates about what was happening in the process while simultaneously explaining the reasons or the different events that had led to this level of frustration and anger. I think everyone was just like, yeah, this is going to be the year, this is what I'm going to do. And then you have these expectations of what you set yourself to achieve. And even if you don't hit the sun, at least you hit the moon. But I feel as if the pandemic, we didn't even leave the ozone layer, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just completely shut down everything that you have planned. I would say that the reason why BAME individuals get significantly more prejudice from their family and friend units than white counterparts is unfortunately, it's due to colonialism. So when modern day eugenics was created, it was created with the idea and the image of a perfect society. And white supremacy effectively wanted to tell people that we are the new, we're the new, we're the evolved, we're the best at this. And therefore they try to remove some of the teachings and the practices of BAME communities and taught their own beliefs, their own ideas about what society should look like. And part of that process meant that colorism and racism sort of came into the system. And another part of that segment that we're currently still seeing is homophobia and transphobia. Hi, my name is Rico Jacob Chace, pronouns he, him. I'm a director at Transactional UK. Transactional UK, we, depending on what the community wants us to focus on, we allocate resources into that. So that's legislative reform, media relations, and healthcare for this year. As just an example, some of the projects that we're working on, we're currently doing a review of non-binary legislation and putting together an action pack for that. I also work as a producer, so I'm producing a radio show right now called Against Racism, which looks at racism across the UK, identifies the different sections of it where it rears its ugly head, and I sort of pull together activists. So me personally, throughout COVID, my business and my plans for this year, because I work as a freelancer, was essentially just to film events, queer events. I didn't actually plan on getting into public speaking. I started doing public speaking during the pandemic because I was so frustrated about what happened with George Floyd. And I realized that I personally, for my own interest in racism in the UK, had accumulated all this knowledge. So I was asked by Rainbow Films in order to go to the Black Lives Matter protest and actually speak vocally about it. And it was good because some of my friends had compromised immune systems or just didn't feel comfortable leaving the house. It meant that when I was doing a live stream, I could give them updates about what was happening in the process while simultaneously explaining the reasons or the different events that had led to this level of frustration and anger. But I think I'm privileged in the sense that I can probably, it's been tough. There's mental health wise, I like being around people, I like being around my own community, and being in a majority cis environment is difficult for me, especially when it comes to pronouns and just general identity. And I know that a lot of creators haven't had the ability to go back to a family unit, and it's been significantly harder for them because their identity is the reason why they can't go home. So for when it comes to especially Black, trans, non-binary people, we've been hit the hardest because we don't have the stable 9-to-5s where the performers. We work as sort of drag kings and drag queens, which is great, but at the same time, we're the first people to lose our jobs, especially with the 0-hour contracts in the retail. So for me personally, I definitely feel as if I'm being blessed in the sense I have the sort of family space to go back to. But I've kind of had to adapt what I do as a business person. So I've gotten into radio. I took a contract to work on a radio station. So for example, to produce the show, I started doing public speaking, and now I've taken that to the point where I can take it to different gigs, and I became a director at Transactional UK. So I guess it's just the adaptability. At the beginning of 2020, I think everyone was just like, yeah, this is going to be the year, this is what I'm going to do. And then you have these expectations of what you set yourself to achieve. And even if you don't hit the sun, at least you hit the moon. But I feel as if the pandemic, we didn't even leave the ozone layer, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just completely shut down everything that you have planned. And I think that frustration was a lot for me to process. But may or may not know my previous story. So I used to work in finance on trading floors, and I actually ended up getting bullied for being queer. So I had post-traumatic stress disorder, and it took me 2 years to recover from that. And in that period, I couldn't actually read and write. So I had to relearn how to read and write. And I went from working in finance to working as a bartender, because it was just a job that I could do while I was recovering. So when it came to 2020, I was just like, okay, I've recovered now, I'm gonna do something now. And then you get there and you're like, oh, okay, okay, back in isolation, great. So I remember messaging my friend, I was just like, are you being serious? Like, I finally got to the point where I can start my life again, actually get things going. And this happened. That had actually done isolation before, because when you have severe anxiety, you can't really be out and about. You spend a lot of time with your own thoughts, with your own mind. In a way, it probably didn't hit me as hard because I've already done it before. I've already gone through that. And I did find myself at the beginning of the pandemic speaking to a lot of my friends about mental health and depression, anxiety, and just how to manage it. And just, yeah, to understand, like, I have a lot of friends on social media, and their social media looks glossy and perfect, and you have a conversation with them, it's very, very hard to, you don't hear about the arguments and the failures and the falling on the face or the lost contracts or the lost jobs. You just see the glossy side, so everything has a balance. I would say that the reason why BAME individuals get significantly more prejudice from their family and friend units than white counterparts is unfortunately, it's due to colonialism. So when modern day eugenics was created, it was created with the idea and the image of a perfect society. And white supremacy effectively wanted to tell people that we are the new, we're the new, we're the evolved, we're the best at this. And therefore they try to remove some of the teachings and the practices of BAME communities and taught their own beliefs, their own ideas about what society should look like. And part of that process meant that colorism and racism sort of came into the system. And another part of that segment that we're currently still seeing is homophobia and transphobia. So trans people actually were part of society. Gender and sexuality were seen as a spectrum across all cultures. There's examples of it, historic examples of this. But because colonialism came in and they had their model version of society, they put in laws that undid the teachings, the historic teachings. Oh, that's pagan. Oh, that's the old way. Oh, that's barbaric. If you take Black society, you had the sort of Christian teachings along with colonialism. I have no problem with Christianity as a concept and as a religion, but the teachings are the Christian teachings that went in Africa and those sort of societies did teach that being queer, that being gay and trans was a sin, and therefore that's kind of what happened there. My heritage is Jamaican, so my ancestors were slaves. So during slavery, they actually used sodomy as a form of punishment, and it's actually written in a document, I think, How to Break a Slave. And in that document itself, it says that if you find the strongest male and you break him using sodomy, that is a way of teaching the entire group to fear you. So that's why homophobic is so inbuilt in, there's so much homophobic hate in the Black community. There's a lot of different factors in it. Basically, there's colonialism and slavery, and then we just are where we are today. But because our history has been removed, we don't know it. We don't know our own history. If I don't know where my ancestors came from, how am I going to know that their practices and teachings and what their cultural heritage was? When you're worried about everything and you feel as if it's hard to sleep because you don't sleep because you're worried, it does build up and does compartmentalize. So you have to try and make sure that you take care of yourself. To be honest, I think because I wasn't socializing as much, I think I did less drinking. I think I probably drink less now than I did before the pandemic, because I'm more disciplined with myself and I kind of know what I want out of life. I can be more focused. So that was a welcome break from Thailand. But I have seen some of my friends end up socializing more, or not necessarily even like big parties and socializing. They just end up partying more because you don't really you have nothing else to do effectively. And I mean, it is difficult because, you know, people are adults, you can't really tell them what to do. But I don't think that is a particularly healthy use of people's time. You celebrate when you've done something. Every day isn't a celebration. You know, you're not on this earth to you're on this earth to make a positive impact, to make a legacy for yourself, or whether that be creating something new, or doing a project, or making a difference for legislation, or just simply picking up your kid from school. That's a legacy. You've created something, you're doing something. I feel like that's life, and I feel like socializing and drinking is great, but it's not quite life. And I think, especially in the UK, of the heavy drinking, I think we kind of missed that to a certain extent. Plus, it just leads to depression. When it comes to dealing with a pandemic and the government trying to justify what's happened, there's always an easier excuse than accountability. It's easier to sort of divert the attention onto a different group, like a young group, saying the young group are responsible for this, than to actually say that we probably should have gone on lockdown sooner, we should have gone on lockdown longer, and that eat out to help out was beneficial to businesses, but it's not beneficial to see the COVID numbers that we're currently seeing. So I think there's a certain element of diverted responsibility there, personally.
Hi, my name is Rico Jacob Chace, and I identify as a Black trans guy. To me, Pride is acceptance, chosen family, and love.
Pride this year was a protest, so I don't know. I always love a good Pride, because I don't think you realise how many of us there are until you actually go out into the street and you see all the colours and the flowers. And Black Trans Pride this year, I was so chuffed. So Pride is an act of protest. My thought this year was actually a protest. It kind of went back to its original origins. And for the Black Lives Matter protest, I actually brought out my trans flag because I was scared that they were going to assault me. But I actually took out my trans flag and stood there in Parliament Square with it, and it was so empowering. It's empowering, it's comforting, it's emotional, and it's this pure happiness. I think future Prides probably shouldn't be quite so corporate. I appreciate the corporate sponsorship, but then there's the question about where does the funding go after this? After you've finished selling your Pride t-shirts, are you sending that to LGBT organizations, corporations, or is it just like a tick box exercise? And I think for corporations, Pride shouldn't just be celebration or Pride Month. It should be every day. Your businesses should be supporting LGBT individuals, especially T. I haven't seen many trans people in professional jobs. It should be there all the time. Changing the rainbow flag to include Black and trans is incredibly important because it creates visibility and awareness. And as we always keep saying, everyone remembers the LGB, but what do we do about the T? You completely forgot the T. And that sort of solidarity is important.